Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jim Clyber Show. Today is Monday, September 14th, 2020, 1 p.m. on the Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Daylight's Time. Oh, I screw it up all the time. Oh, it was a weekend, and I really didn't pay too much attention to the news over the weekend. Gosh, how good it feels. The combination of not paying attention to it too much and also it not being kind of thrown in my face. It seemed that it was a rather quiet weekend for the news, and I don't know how many quiet weekends we've had over the summer for the news here in the U.S. Frankly, not even just the summer, but the last 6 months or so, or even longer, because before the pandemic, there was impeachment and there's other things going on in the U.S. So it was nice to not have so many breaking news stories that were trying to grab my attention and show me how the world is falling apart. Nope, it was nice. But, of course, it's Monday, and so we're back to it. And I've been thinking about something as it relates to Trump, as many of us think about Trump these days, and how his impact on our society. And I remember coming across it was a documentary, but I didn't see the documentary because it was like an hour long. And when somebody sends me a YouTube video that's an hour long, I pause for a second. But there was a blog post that was talking about the article or the documentary, and it said that documentary was about conspiracy theories and conspiracy thinking, and made the argument that when we go into situations of uncertainty, we typically follow one of two paths. We either go into magical thinking or evidence-based thinking. And so the author was arguing that many people who go into conspiracies or like get really deep into conspiracy theories often fall into the magical thinking perspective. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Trump, magical thinking, and evidence-based thinking. And I think, okay, so I would typically fall more into the evidence-based thinking. I studied engineering for a while. I grew up in a household where my dad was an engineer, and I grew up in Michigan where a lot of things, well, it depends. It can be a lot more practical and kind of engineering culture or kind of factory culture, where we downplay a lot of things, where we don't make things out to be, how do you put it? We don't exaggerate too often. Now, obviously, I can't speak for the whole culture and for every individual in it, but there is a big penalty socially in Michigan, at least, for being arrogant or being too cocky sometimes. I learned this the hard way when I moved out to California, and I was trying to start an app. I was building this app, and it's called iFilio, and I built it myself on Android. I paid somebody to copy it over to iPhone, and I used it all the time. And I had some friends that were using it, and I was getting some really good feedback. I mean, one person used it, and then 3 weeks later, she's like, "We need to talk." So we jumped on a Skype call, and she says, "It has changed the relationship with my ex-husband, with whom I share a child. It has changed the relationship with my mother, whom I've been fighting with for a while. And it helped me get back into contact and change relationship with my estranged brother, who I haven't talked to in 5 or 10 years or something." And I was aghast. What? In 3 weeks of just using this app that asks, "How do I feel? What's happening?" Very simple, you know? And so I heard similar feedback from quite a few other people. You know, one guy was traveling through India, and he said that at the time he only had 2 apps on his phone. It was WhatsApp and iFilio. And I got really excited. This was a couple weeks after WhatsApp got bought by Facebook for like $19 billion. I was like, wait, what? This is a heck of a testimonial. So I asked him, I said, why did you have just those two apps? And he says, well, iFilio doesn't take up much power because it doesn't connect to the internet. And I had a really cheap phone, so I didn't, want to zap the battery that fast. And he says, I guess, WhatsApp was so I could stay connected with my friends and family, and iFilio was so I could stay connected with myself. What? And so, fast forward a couple weeks or months, I can't even remember. And I'm out in Oakland, California, hanging out with my friend and some of his friends. And we go into the bar, and the guy asked me what I do, and I say, I got this app called iFilio. And he says, oh, okay, is it on Android as well? I said, yeah, actually I built it on Android, but it's also on iPhone. And he goes, oh. He says, well, what's it about? And I started telling him some of the testimonials. And he pauses me and he goes, hold on. There are some people who get millions of dollars in funding and never come up with a product. I just kind of laughed. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. There's a lot of people who are very good at selling this dream of a product, and then they get tons of money and they never even come up with the product. And he says, let alone having a product on both of those platforms. Mind you, this was 2014 or so. So it was still relatively early, I think, it was like iPhone 5. It was like the 5th generation of smartphones that were coming out. And then he says, and then do you know how many people get tens of millions of dollars in funding and never get the testimonials that you already have? And so for me, this was a shock, because my mind, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm very focused on trying to improve the quality and try to improve the efficiency and et cetera, et cetera. I've talked about this before, but this idea of trying to make sure I have a very strong underlying product and not sell a dream. I want to make the dream, not sell the dream. And I get very frustrated when people will sell a dream and don't have the underlying structure to make it happen. Very, very, very frustrated. And that's why sometimes I get very frustrated with some of the salespeople out there. Because if you think of like the extreme end of sales, is the person that will go out and sell anything and then come back to the team and be like, oh, well, I don't know how we're going to do it, but I already sold it, so you got to figure out how to do it. I was the one at a consulting firm, at other companies, being the one behind the scenes where the salesperson came back and says, okay, now you got to figure out how to do this thing that I sold that doesn't have much connection with reality, but you could figure it out. You just got to work harder. What? So I come at it from the engineering feasibility standpoint many times and get very frustrated. And I think that's why, okay, let's put it this way. I think Trump often goes into that magical thinking, which is I'm going to sell the dream, but doesn't know how to actually make the dream happen. And for someone like me, who's focused on making the dream happen, who's focused on making sure that the machine runs well, that the machine gets built, that the machine fits with standards and specifications and the law and all this stuff, to make sure that it checks the boxes, to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. A person who focuses much more on that, I can get very frustrated when someone comes out and seems to just do the selling aspect of it. And but for other people, there are other people who are okay with that. They like the selling aspect. They like the idea of talking about what's possible, and get very frustrated when someone comes in and says that's not possible. And and I think that's why a lot of us may dislike some lawyers and dislike some engineers and other people like that who we come and say, oh, we want to do this and this and this, and the person says, well, that's not going to happen. that doesn't work with physics, or that doesn't work with the law that currently exists. And it's often these people, the evidence, I would say the evidence-based thinkers. It's often these people who say no, that's not possible. And someone who is in the more magical thinking, or who, is more focused on the idea than the implementation, doesn't like to hear no. I'm speaking, as if I'm the one who's always in the evidence-based side, but I am often on the other side too, where I talk about some really big vision and big idea, and then people are like, no, that's not going to work. Oh, that'll never work. That's things have always been this way. They'll never be like that, blah, blah, blah. And I can get super frustrated as well. So I kind of see both sides. And maybe many of us are this way, that in some aspects we're very evidence-based and very practical. In other aspects, we're much more idealistic, or kind of magical in a way. And I think, okay, let's take the example of what's going on right now with President Trump and the coronavirus. So most of the time in public, Trump has been saying that this is not a big deal. It's a hoax, that it's just going to go away, that the economy is going to bounce back, that we need to get the economy back and everything will be fine. And most of the epidemiologists and doctors and researchers and scientists have been saying, no, that's not going to happen. It's not just going to go away. It's not just going to disappear. We need to start doing social distancing, quarantining, testing, tracing, development of treatments, development of vaccines, coordination. We need to do a lot of work to make sure that this virus is contained. And I can sense the frustration in Trump when he says to everyone, hey, this is just going to go away. And then other people say, no, wait a second, that's not going to happen, which is often what, like I said, the engineering type comes in and says, no, but that doesn't work. We need something practical that'll actually work. The one who's selling the dream doesn't necessarily want to hear that, because I don't know why. Because it's a balance. I think we want to sell the optimism and the hope, and we have to. It's hard to move forward if we don't have hope and optimism for the future. I think we do have to try to get into a hopeful state, and by processing our grief, by going through a lot of the other emotions that we have, but getting to a place where we do feel hopeful and about the future. And when I say hopeful, I talk about not knowing what's going to happen in the future, but believing something good is going to happen. And not knowing how it's going to happen, but just in a way letting go and just hoping that things go well. And I think this state of mind, this emotional state, can transform the way we interact with people. Because if we're interacting from a perspective of pessimism or doubt or fear, then we don't come together and think that something good is going to happen. We think bad things are going to happen, and we can get very paralyzed in many ways. So we almost lock up and cripple up more than letting go and relaxing. So I think that aspect of magical thinking or dreaming or being idealistic and being hopeful is helpful. I don't think it works by itself. I think the aspect of being practical and evidence-based and really focused on not the possibility, but the practicality of something also is helpful, because that's how things get built. It's by experimenting, by trying, by recognizing limitations and constraints and playing within the constraints and trying to come up with new solutions, but looking at the evidence to make sure that the solution actually did work, and it's not just something that our intuition wants to believe, but something that actually happened. Looking at statistics, looking at trials and things like this. Wanting to know through scientific rigor that this thing actually worked, to know that something is robust, to know that something is likely to pass the trials and tribulations that it will face. I think that perspective is also helpful. Now, I think if we have too much of one, then it's dangerous, because too idealistic, and then we lose touch with reality. Too focused in reality, and then we have our heads buried in the sand. And the metaphorical ostrich with its head in the sand. And I think that was the main struggle that we had with one of the main struggles we had with coronavirus here in the United States, and became more apparent as this book by Bob Woodward is coming out called Rage, where Bob Woodward interviewed Trump, I think 19 times, 18 times or something, or 16, I don't know, many times over the course of December 2019 until I think August 2020. So through the impeachment and through coronavirus starting and progressing. And one revelation in the book, and not just revelation in the book, but also audio taped revelation, was that Trump was publicly stating that this is a hoax, this is not a big deal, this coronavirus is just going to go away, it's just like the flu, et cetera, et cetera. And yet privately he said to Bob Woodward that this thing is very serious, that it spreads through the air, and that it's vicious, it moves quickly. And even heard today that in one meeting he said that people, they were in a meeting in the Oval Office with like 20 people. One person sneezed, and it was like a small sneeze, not even a big sneeze, and the room cleared out, including the president. So that level of fear and caution when it came to the virus. And so it's this, a lot of people have been attacking Trump for coming out and downplaying it, or not making, or wanting the American public not to panic. I mean, personally, I agree with being honest and telling the truth. I think that's the strongest method. Because it tells the citizens, it tells the other person that you trust them. If I'm telling you the truth, that means I trust your ability to handle the truth. Going back to the movie A Few Good Men, where at the end, I think it was Colonel Jessup, played by Jack Nicholson. I always screw up with Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson says to Tom Cruise, and he says, "You want the truth? You can't handle the truth." And he says it much more emphatically. I'm a little bit nervous to say that on the show. I really jump into, "You want the truth." And so saying the truth and being honest with someone else can show to them that we trust their intentions, and we also trust their ability to receive the truth. We think that they're strong enough, they're kind enough to be able to handle it. And so I think I would have preferred if Trump came out and stated the truth to us. I understand why he may not have wanted to, because I don't think he trusted the public to not hoard things, to not get really afraid, to not blame him, to not throw the economy into a downward spiral. I mean, lots of things, I'm sure. The fear of what we would have done, I think that resided in him. But I think it's okay in some ways to come out and to try to maintain the focus on hope. I would prefer to say that, yes, things are bad, and then try to get to the process of hope, to really go through the pain and the fear, and then come out and say that we are, like, for example, saying, yes, this is a virus that may cause a lot of pain and suffering in our country. It may kill people that we love. It may harm others, and it may wreak havoc on our economy. I'll be honest about that. And at the same time, I'll be honest that we have one of the best institutions in the world in terms of dealing with epidemiology and pandemics. The Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, is one of the strongest institutions in the world for dealing with this. And I also believe that we as American people have not only the kindness to help each other, but the skills to do so. We are a nation of entrepreneurs. We are a nation of innovators. We are a nation of scientists and hard workers and people that give a damn. And while these days may seem dark, we have been through darker times and we will come out of this together. And if we work together, which I know we can, I've seen it in the past and I'll see it again. When we work together, we can do anything as a nation. So we need to come together, and I ask for your help because this is something we haven't experienced in our lifetimes. And at times it's going to seem very dark and very hopeless, but I know that if we're all fighting on the same team, we can not only help the people in our country, but we can help the people around the world. And the world's looking to us for leadership. And it's our time to shine. We've been given this opportunity to show the world what we can do. And we can't do it alone. We need your help, and you need our help. And let's do this. So, I mean, I would have appreciated if he said it that way instead of coming out and saying that's a hoax and that we're going to rebound. I still think the idea was to try to give hope and to try to inspire people in a way, but I don't think it landed as strongly as it could have. But even if he came out and just talked about it being a hoax, so that is not a big deal, to downplay the virus, okay. What was he doing behind the scenes to make sure that this was going to be contained? It's one thing to try to control the panic of the crowd. It's like the salesperson going out and saying, oh, we can totally build this project. We can totally build you that website in 1 week. Oh, yeah, easily. It's okay, go do that, sell to the client like that. But when you come back to your team, how do you have to build it. Like, you can't just tell them. You have to actually do something behind the scenes to make it happen. And so I think that's the thing where I get so frustrated. It's like, okay, fine. If you're going to lie, not lie to us, lie. You lie or hide or to try to, calm our fears. If you're going to do that, fine. I understand. But at least go back to your team and say, this is a big deal and we need to fix this now and we need to get this in order and this in order and this in order. And I'm the salesperson. I know how to sell the dream. I don't know how to make this thing happen. I need a team behind me that knows how to make this happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to appoint these people and I'm going to let them make the decisions, because these are the people who know how to resolve this. They know how to build this solution, and I need them in charge. And so instead of going back and hamstringing or hindering those who said no to him, I would say the more evidence-based scientists and policymakers and things, instead of hindering them and putting roadblocks in their way, giving them the reins and saying, okay, I'll be the one who is doing all the speaking out in public and communicating with the client, basically, but you need to get it done. We need to get this project done, because if we don't, they're not going to buy my story anymore. Like, I can only sell the dream so many times before people realize that I'm not building the product. I can only sell you the dream house so many times before they realize that it's a money pit and they get in and the house is just falling apart. A little reference to the Money Pit movie back in the 80s, 90s. Oh, goodness. I was just a kid. Tom Hanks was even Tom Hanks was a little baby in that, but less baby than me, obviously. And I think that's what eats at me. I mean, it'd be one thing if he were going out there and trying to sell a new TV show and the TV show flopped because the production crew didn't get it together. But this was about lives. This was about American lives. I think we've almost had 200,000 people die because of this. And not just die quickly within what? 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks at the most, and die alone, where we can't go give them a hug. We can't console our family members. We can't bury them. I think I try to avoid thinking about it because it's heavy. It's heavy, the amount of people in this country who have known someone who has died. And that's not just talking about the virus. This is talking about the suicides and the overdoses and the homicides and gosh, a lot of people are dying. And if we're not dying, if we're not dying physically, we're dying emotionally. We're turning off. We're becoming numb. We're becoming filled with fear and rage. We're becoming filled with hopelessness in a way. And I think that's the problem. When we just focus on trying to maintain this state of hope and this state of optimism, when the natural swings of grief, sadness, anger, fear, doubt come into play, we cast them aside and we try to stay in this state of hope. We try to stay in this state of this belief that everything is going to be okay. We just try to stay in it the whole time. We ignore all the other emotions and they start to overwhelm our lives. He wanted to downplay it and give people hope that this will be okay. And then without empowering the people behind the scenes to make it happen, at least empowering them, I argue we should have empowered everyone, but without at least empowering the people behind the scenes to make it happen, it's fallen apart. I can't tell you how many people are satisfied with what's happening right now. How many people have hope, like genuine hope and genuine gratitude for what has happened. But I don't think it's ever too late. I think we can turn this around. But I believe it requires a balance of being hopeful and being practical, with feeling deep confidence, but also entertaining the deep doubt. Because if we just focus on the one, we're likely to miss the other, and the other is likely to overwhelm what's going on with us. It's hard to find that balance in ourselves. It's hard to find the balance of being very grounded in reality and very practical, but also having our heads up in the clouds and dreaming. It's really hard. It's really hard. And I say that maybe for others it's easier, but I know for me it's very difficult. I can spend days or weeks or months with my feet firmly planted on the ground and maybe my head underneath and not reaching out for the stars. And the other time I can spend weeks, days, months, or whatever with my head in the clouds and my feet so far off the ground that nothing is happening. I just hope for the sake of the people in this country and the people around the world, that we as Americans start to come together and appreciate both parts of life, both attitudes, the practicality and the dreaming, to make sure that we start resolving this conflict, that we start bringing this country back together. It's possible. It will take a lot of work, and I believe we can do it. Whew, was that heavy, soft? I don't know. I just kind of run with these things, and some of these moments feel good, and some of them feel a little... there we go. There we go. Confidence and doubt, right together, 1-to-1. Have a good one.